We continue our interview with journalist Paul Berriff, who was at the base of the South Tower when it came down on top of him and first responders he was covering. He's about to wake up under the dust and debris from both the North and the South Tower. Just looking at your footage that I've seen, gosh, I don't know how many times did you think the top was coming down? Did you expect the whole thing to come down? And I imagine it was hard to compute because of just the scale of it. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, all I remember was the top 3 floors hurtling towards the camera, and that's when I started to run. Once the debris hit me, I was knocked unconscious, and I was lying in the the debris for, I think, 25 odd minutes, and apparently I was lying there when the North Tower came down as well. But we that were there that experienced all that only remember seeing the top floors coming down. The rest of the world, like all of you, were watching it on wide shots. You could see the whole building coming down. But those of us that were actually in the immediate vicinity underneath the towers only recall the top coming down. And then once the debris and the dust cloud hit us, everything went black.
Were you under rubble from the South and the North Tower eventually at the same time?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the South Tower came down and I was in the rubble, and then the North Tower came down. Obviously, some of the rubble around me was from that as well. When I came to, everything was pitch black. My mouth was full of all this cement dust, and my nose and my eyes and my ears. I could hardly breathe, and as I mentioned earlier, I'd been taught a lot about the firefighting, and I'd done all the training courses with fire officers, and they always told me that if you're in a smoke-filled building, about 3 or 4 inches off the ground, there's always air. You can normally breathe. So I was looking for this magic air, but there wasn't anything to breathe at all. It was just black cement dust everywhere. And it was the one time in my life when I thought that I was going to die. I mean, I've been in 3 near-death experiences before. I was blown off a volcano in Nicaragua. I've been in a helicopter crash in the Scottish mountains and jumped from a sinking ship in the North Sea. But this was the biggie. And I'd managed to get away with my life with all the other 3. But I thought for a moment that day that my number was up, really. Anyway, I began crawling in the darkness, so I was still trying to breathe, and my mouth was all gungy and everything, and I could hear lots of noises going on around me and explosions. I couldn't see anybody at all. I was seemed to be the only person around, but there again I couldn't because it was pretty dark. So I started moving my hands around, and within 3 or 4 minutes I touched the side of a car, and I knew that all the cars in the area were not parking on West Street, which was the main road underneath the towers, but all the streets running off West Street ran down to the Hudson River. So I thought, if I follow the cars down, I'll be able to get to the river and obviously try and get some more air and sort myself out. I got to car number 3 and I ran my hand down the side of the car, and I then felt a person, a body, and I could tell it was a fireman, and I remember shouting, "Can I use your air bottle? Can I use your air bottle?" because I wanted some air to breathe. He didn't reply, so obviously he succumbed to the collapse. So I continued crawling. Excuse me. I continued crawling, and the visibility was still 0 at the time. And after about 5 minutes, it started to clear a little bit. And I could still breathe, so I thought, well, I'm still alive. I'm breathing well. And then I had this awful feeling, where's Lulu, my sound recordist? I stood up, and I remember the visibility was just cleared for about 25 yards I could see in front of me. And everything had gone from colour to black and white. All the trees were smashed over. I could just in front of me in the distance see a fire department ambulance with its lights, red and white lights flashing, that looked like a lighthouse on the East Coast through the fog. Nobody about, just completely stillness with the occasional explosion I could hear going on around me. So I stood up and I was shouting, "Lulu, where are you? Where are you?" And I was pretty worried about that, because as the leader of the film team, it's my responsibility for her safety. So I decided to backtrack down the street where I'd just come from and made my way to the point where I thought we got hit. And believe it or not, in the rubble I saw the top of the sound mixer, so I pulled that up. And then underneath that, I found my smashed camera. Which is,
wow.
This is it.
Wow.
It's still got all the dust on it. The camera had been completely decapitated. The lens, that's the front of the lens. That's still got the dust from that day on it. But there's no sign of Lulu. So I put the sound mixer around my neck and held the camera and looked in front of me, and all I could see was bits of the tower still embedded in the road. And at this point, I still didn't know the towers had collapsed. The building to my right was on fire from ground floor to the top. All the fire engines and police cars were burning. Nobody in sight. So I looked down at the recorder and smashed camera, and something told me to turn around and get the hell out of there. Normally I would have put the camera down and gone in to try and help, but something said go. I couldn't see anybody at all, and I was later told that I was probably the first live person in literally the epicenter of it. I mean, I was literally right in the middle of it all there at the time, and I turned around and started to make my way back down West Street. I was trying to get back to my apartment block and clambering over burning cars and rubble and everything else. I was absolutely soaked with sweat, and everything was, my trousers had been burning, they were all scorched. And I was still trying to get all this dust from my eyes, and within 15, 20 minutes, I got back to Ocean Apartments, just down in Battery Park there. Walked into the lobby, and I heard a voice saying, "Oh, Paul, there you are. We wondered where you were." And it was Lulu, my sound recorders, and she'd been grabbed by one of the fire officers, and they'd run into an underground car park just nearby and missed the full force of it, I think. So she gave me a bottle of water, and then she said, "The back of your shirt's covered in blood." And that was the first time I'd known I got any injury. So within an hour or two, I was being looked over by paramedics, and then I was shipped out on the last ferry boat to Staten Island to University Hospital, where they treated me for a 2-inch head wound.
You could hear in his interview his cough. That's because the toxic dust he breathed in on 9/11. Paul Berriff tells me he has cancer in his lungs. He openly thinks he has about 5 years to live, a reason he was more than happy to speak with us, so we may never forget 9/11.